Hello, Doomloopers, and welcome to another episode of the Doomloop Dispatch, the show that covers the worst parts of the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm Kevin L. Jones, and with me is one of my favorite people in the universe.
D. Scott Miller.
Sorry, I could probably did a better setup for that, but still, I just wanted to throw in a nice compliment to start today.
I was like, who's he talking about?
Okay, that just goes to show I don't say enough nice things about you, Scott. I'm sorry. All the drama's coming out now. Okay, so revealing. No joke. Anyways, today we have a repeat guest, one of our other favorite people in the universe, Brandee Marckmann, from the San Francisco Education Alliance. We had her all the way back on episode 2. She was one of the first people I wanted to talk to on this show, and I wanted to bring her back again because we have so much going on with San Francisco schools. I mean, I get ready for a long one. This could be a big episode because there's just so much to say with the pending school closures, the school board coup, and everything else going on. And it's just bad management. So first off, Brandee, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm busy and I'm very there's as you said, there's a lot to fight. There's a lot to go on. There's a lot of work to do. But I just want to say it is so good to be back on the Doomloop Dispatch. And yeah, Scott, so thrilled you're addition here. I've been a long time admirer of your work. Glad to see your episode here. And Kevin, I want to give you a shout out. You're one of my favorite journalists in the universe because you were the first Bay Area journalist that I know, because I was watching a lot of this, to actually talk about the school board recall and not just talk about it, but to talk about the right-wing interests that were funding it, like David Sachs. You were, I can't remember the name of the podcast you went on and where you talked about that. It was like a national, but I was like, somebody finally gets it.
The West Wing thing.
The West Wing thing. Yeah. Great podcast for progressives. So thank you for being the first, and thank you for keeping on and just keeping on, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's totally why I started this too, because just seeing how the local publications continue to ignore the background of these recalls, the background of these school board takeovers, it's especially because no one wants to think that these people that are claiming to be moderates and centrists, aren't. What, they would lie?
No, we're perfect, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Well, so let's get into it. Let's just, give a little background about why the San Francisco Unified School District is considering closing schools.
It comes down to privatization. And so you look at the money behind this is all part of the plan. And this is a national trend. We've seen a lot of school closures going on, happening nationwide, Pittsburgh, Seattle, and they all have a lot of very similar elements. So there are a number of reasons for that. And one is pandemic monies have dried up for schools. So there was this purported effort to we have to close schools because there's a funding crisis. Well, actually, closing schools does not solve the funding crisis, any funding crisis. If anything, it will make enrollment drop even more. We've seen this happen in other cities. This is a privatization plan. And I am a part of an incredible organization called the Journey for Justice Alliance. And they basically work with grassroots organizations like the San Francisco Education Alliance all over the U.S. And I have been in Zoom rooms where people are going through these same things for schools. You look at the money behind the school board recall. It was funded by Arthur Rock, who is a 90-something-year-old billionaire who is very pro-charter school. Michael Moritz, another billionaire. It was definitely pro-privatization. You look at the person who just got appointed to the San Francisco School Board, Phil Kim, 3-time failed school board candidate who was hired by Matt Wayne, our superintendent, to first be the executive director of basically school closures. So he was working right under Matt Wayne and then was appointed by London Breed. So this is definitely a move toward privatization. The end game could be, could very well be charter schools. The schools has not yet, the school district rather has not said what they want to use those empty school buildings for. They say they don't, but we know there is a plan. We just don't know what the plan is. So yeah, that's kind of just the broad lay of the land there that I'll just say is really undergirding a lot of this.
So do you think that London Breed is like aware of the privatization plan, and then that's the reason why she brought this guy in? Or do you think that somebody else just recommended her and Breed is just going along with it?
I can't say exactly what London Breed's motives are. I can say that during the 2020 presidential race, she endorsed Mayor Michael Bloomberg for mayor, who was very pro-privatization. I mean, really, the former Republican mayor before he became an independent and Democrat, really the most, I mean, not even just Biden, who's straight up moderate. And Michael Bloomberg has donated $200,000 to a political action committee to get her reelected. So I can't say this is what London Breed wants, but we do know, I always look at where the money comes from, and I feel like, yeah, there are probably some motives there.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's definitely through her appointees. You can see some kind of mission, definitely they're on definitely one side, and they're all basically on the same page. But yeah, so that being said, with the possible school closures, the drying up of pandemic money, how much of the funding issues too, because I see that it's like almost like it's like 368 million in debt is what the school district is in, or something to that effect, or like operating debt or something. It's something weird like that. San Francisco Education Alliance has some great blogs about the school closure presentation that was given last week, I believe. Highly recommend how you guys break it all down. But yeah, a big part of this is the budget. Now, there was definitely some budget issues, such as the payroll system that lost millions, and as well as these like hiring more middle managers and stuff. Well, are they kind of doing it to themselves? That's why we have to close schools.
I'm and I know I referenced this during the first not the first, but the last time I went on the Doomloop Dispatch. I think this all goes back to Prop 13, which was for folks who don't know, Prop 13 was passed by voters in 1978. It had a lot of Ronald Reagan energy behind that. It basically made it so property taxes for both residential and commercial buildings are never reassessed in California. So we have people not just people, but corporations like Disneyland and ExxonMobil, Chevron, paying the same dollar amount as they were in 1978. So you multiply that by, think of all the commercial properties in San Francisco. That is why our state is in such, we're always under budget. That is why California went from being first in the nation, or toward the top of the nation when it comes to public school funding, to being toward the bottom. And New York is number one. So this is a long trajectory here. There was also around that time, that was also organized. There's a really great book. It's called Punished for Dreaming. It's by Bettina Love. Cannot recommend it enough. How school reform harms Black children and how we heal. It talks about a lot of that energy, this anti-public school energy coming from the Reagan era. Really recommend it as a read. But so the reason why we have all of this dysfunction in California from our state, local government, to a lot of times the dysfunction we see like in the upper echelons of the ways our schools operate is because they're so underfunded. If you have an underfunded system, it's harder to hire good people. It's harder to stop turnover. And so that is really, I think, the bedrock of what began this crisis. Folks may remember in 2020 we had Prop 15, Schools and Communities First, which was on the ballot, and it almost passed.
Yeah, Zuckerberg, right? Jan
People need to
Zuckerberg.
support it. A lot of people, this brings together a lot of people. A lot of tech execs actually support Prop 13 reform because this kind of school finance reform, because they don't have a lot of huge commercial property investments. So, if Prop 15 had passed, and half of the money would have gone to schools and community colleges, the other half would have gone toward county governments to use specifically for things like libraries, housing, transportation, things that are public goods and that benefit everyone. This would have brought $80 million into San Francisco every year, annually.
Wow.
And it would have increased SFUSD's budget by 20%. And so I guess my call to action for the community and for parents, like, we, a lot of time as parents, spend so much time doing things like bake sales. And I don't want to, no shade to anybody. I've baked cookies for bake sales and things like that. These parents do this out of love of their hearts. But if we really want to see an impact and not stop having to have these bake sales, we need to really focus on Prop 13 reform. So SF Education Alliance works a lot with one of my favorite organizations in the world, Evolve California. We have gone out to farmers markets, have people sign petitions to ask Newsom to support school finance, Prop 13 reform. I basically call it school finance reform because that's what it is. We've also had folks having house parties for Evolve California. They're just a fantastic group, and really encourage everybody here to get involved to them. They have a really amazing website where you can get involved and join the amazing things they do. Secondly, San Francisco, compared to other school districts, other counties, gives a much smaller share. I wish I had this chart handy, but you have a much smaller share of property tax revenue to SFUSD and to City College compared to other urban counties. And so that's part of it. I mean, we've had a very defunded, we've had our city budget raided by the police, and so that has made our schools less vibrant. Second of all, yes, there have been a lot of bad decisions. UESF, United Educators of San Francisco, our teachers union, put out an amazing paper called, I can't remember the name exactly, but I think it's from payroll glitches to pumpkin patches. But it talks about how SCFUSD, the central office, has just exploded in the last 10 years. Like, they have supervisors of supervisors of supervisors. And so some of this is somewhat necessary because San Francisco is a city county government and we don't have a separate county education office, but a lot of it is just a lot of mismanagement and just central office expanding more than it really should. It's also there's just been a lot of little decisions that have added up, like them hiring a lot of consultants. And also, like, one example, the district spent $2 million on a program. It was an ed tech program that none of our math educators wanted, called Dream. And so it's just like they've kind of frittered away, they've just made some really bad decisions as well. So
yeah, I believe it. Yeah, or at least that's what I can tell. Also, I should note that without going on a little tangent, Prop 13 also might be the reason why there's this YIMBY push to build more into California, because everyone wants to take advantage of those low commercial property tax rates. But yeah, it's almost like there's coordinated self-sabotage. It's so insane, and there's been so many. I mean, and even too what they're even have a prop on now that would hopefully look at Prop 13 again. Is that right? And
sorry, ahead.
Oh, no, go on.
Yeah. No, with YIMBY, I'm not a YIMBY, I will say, but actually, Prop 13 sometimes discourages new building, because when you do, commercial property, if you're a brand new homeowner or you buy something or build something, the tax rate is actually really high.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And actually, amazingly, there a lot of, I don't know if both state and local, but I know there are I can't say if it was California or SFUMB, but they tend to be pretty supportive of Prop 13 reform. I mean, this is one thing where a lot of moderates are supportive. I think why it didn't pass was because of fear tactics in Southern California. Just the other side had so much money.
You'll lose your house. You'll lose your house.
Yeah, and which, the school finance reform that they're working on, it doesn't even touch residential property. It's only commercial property for buildings $3 million or up. So your mom and pop businesses are probably going to be fine, So
who actually is the opposition? I mean, like, I know that there's people who want to do charter schools, private schools, and all that. But who can you name the opposition? Like, who actually are these people who are against helping public schools?
So the real estate industry is as far as Prop 13. Yeah, it's the real estate industry. They are behind it 100%.
Yeah.
They're the biggest. I mean, so in California, we can't blame Republicans for not passing Prop 13 reform because we're obviously a majority Democratic state. So by and large, it's the real estate industry.
Wow.
So crazy. It's so crazy. So now we have at least one charter school employee on the school board who Phil Kim, 34-year-old Phil Kim from KIPP Schools, who is tapped to help the school closure program, was basically also a failed school candidate. Tried twice at least.
3 times.
3 times to get on the school board. Never made it on until basically Breed forced him in there. And now he's on the board. Now, as a public school activist, how does it make you feel to have such charter school influence so close to the school board?
Yeah, not great. And it does not make me trust our superintendent, who came here from Hayward, where he tried to shut down a lot of schools over there. So, it's not a good thing. The San Francisco Education Alliance joined the boards of San Francisco Bernie-crats, Richmond District Dem Club Board, and also the board of Pueblo Unido. They're an amazing, brand new political club, basically speaking out against Phil Kim being put in this position and promising to organize, and are already organizing for any kind of attempted privatization of the schools. And it's hard to say if they will become charter schools or if this is going to be a land grab by the real estate industry, because San Francisco Unified School District is the second largest landowner in San Francisco, right behind the Catholic Church. And we all know how valuable land is in San Francisco.
Yeah. So, how do you feel about Matt Wayne calling the schools a portfolio?
Yeah.
Don't get me started. So it's so dehumanizing that they had tried the same model in Denver. They tried this this portfolio, and that it really does show us like they just see it as real estate instead of seeing children's lives. I mean, it's very dehumanizing. Yeah.
And so then how do you feel about KIPP Schools as a charter school company? Because what I've seen, was it's tough for me on a side note, because as a reporter, I saw the damage done by charter schools. Again, 1 in 5 are successful, and that means one in last a few years. I have yet to see very many have that much longevity. And I remember covering schools that just closed out of nowhere. Literally just one day kids showed up and the doors were closed. That's the kind of risk you run with charter schools. But on the other hand, my wife is a teacher. She's now an education consultant. She's been with education for years. And in many ways, she's so against the public school system and what it's been turned into that she appreciates charter schools. For example, when I brought up KIPP and was saying, I've heard that, they do things to kind of cook their numbers, keep out, students that aren't succeeding and that kind of thing. And she was like, no, from her experience, KIPP charter schools, for one, really focus on students of color, especially from low-income backgrounds, as well as they do supply those with learning needs. So what is your thought about KIPP schools?
So my thought about KIPS goes, I always look, and so I'm not somebody who is just anti-charter school. I am anti-charter school industry.
Yeah.
I look, and I am somebody who looks at the money behind KIPP. So KIPP is funded by the Chartered School Growth Fund. The KIPP NorCal is funded by Michael Moritz, who is a billionaire who is underwriting all sorts of really bad things, like the San Francisco Parent Coalition and AstroTurf Group together.
And SF Standard, too.
The SF Standard, right. Or,
the piece they wrote on Kim is just ridiculous. It's just the most silly thing. I couldn't even believe it. It's like a press release. It was just crazy.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's like a billionaire's blog. Yeah. So, I mean, people may have, there may be KIPP schools that don't do that. I think they're getting a little better. I know. So here was my experience with KIPP. When my kid, I was in first grade or kindergarten, I was on the email for an amazing organization. They do a lot of work with parents in the southeast part of San Francisco, Coleman Advocates for Children and Youth. They put out a call for parents to come in and give public comment against KIPP basically moving into Malcolm X Academy, which is a school in the Bayview. So they wanted to basically co-locate in Malcolm X. So to have two different school communities within a school building. And I remember the Malcolm X parents and teachers just being furious about that, saying, this needs to be so. And then I saw at that same, I think it was that same meeting or maybe another time, KIPP tried to relocate. There was an organization, they're another AstroTurf, Innovate Public Schools. They get a lot of EdTech billionaire money. They had this big chartered bus and had bussed in a whole bunch of parents who didn't live in San Francisco to speak out in support of having KIPP. So I don't want to say they're families whose kids don't have a good experience but KIPP also has the nickname of kids in prison prep because they do. I mean, you can Google all this. They have they're pretty notorious for having very harsh disciplinary standards. I've talked to them. Yeah. So and then I would say, yes, our public schools aren't perfect, but one thing that's true about charter schools in San Francisco is that they can expel and counsel out students that go, and then those students go to our public schools. But public schools necessarily can't do that. So KIPPs, charter schools don't also have the level of public oversight that public schools do, which is why you see so many charter schools closing. There's an organization another organization, the SF Ed Alliance is a member of the the Network for Public Education. And they have a part on their blog called Another Day, Another Charter School Scandal. So yeah.
Oh my God.
Kind of a long-winded answer to your question. But
No, I'm really glad though, because that's something to be pointed out, especially, it's very easy when they have so much money behind them to kind of hide their issues. And so we need this kind of discussion. And also, I mean, the thing too, that I kind of wanted to, it's a little bit of a tangent, but, one thing that charter schools do too, is that they basically kind of siphon away funding. Especially like tech organizations, the Gates Foundation and stuff. They're not sending it to public schools. They're sending it to charter schools too. And they're getting I still remember the time that this charter school in Novato got an $800,000 grant from the Gates Foundation. And I asked them, what are you going to do with that? And they're like, it's going to go to administration. and then what happens? Like a year later, the place closes down. So, I mean, this is what the kind of part of the business model, which is just so frustrating. But so now what's surprising to me too, is with this the school board is you also have like Matt Alexander on, who helped with the June Jordan School for Equity. So, I mean, a great program in terms of something you could do within a public school, the public school system, a small school, a population of 250 students. What a great idea, especially because it really did see some progress with its student population. Now, why are even people like him so bent on closing our schools? Seems so excited. I know there's talk of like decreasing enrollment, but honestly, with the school spaces and stuff, I would think that's a good thing, especially he was involved with a small school.
Yeah, I've been to, so they had these meetings, and this is a pattern of what school closure looked like. They have these, they call them resource alignment initiative meetings, which is like, they should basically just call them school closure meetings. It's an ostensible way for them to talk about school closure and give public comment. And I remember they had one that was about, it was looking at school size, and the district had a very negative view of, they were just saying like, oh, small schools can't have all these programs and can't have this and that. Whereas with some families and kids, especially kids with this, like, you might think of a kid with a disability like autism who will really thrive at a small school. And there's just I think why they might be targeting small schools is that it's easier to close them because they don't have as many parents there, which is to fight back, which is really cynical, right? Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily think that that Matt Alexander wants to close schools. I think that I do think that the more progressive members of the board are underestimating just how much public opinion there is against closing schools. I think part of the effect, unfortunately, of our school board recall is that people feel very scared and intimidated and gun shy. And so that is why we need parents showing up at school board meetings, giving public comment, writing op-eds against school closures, because I think, part of the reason why the recall has succeeded is because we don't have this vibrant system to be able to push back. The recall was galvanized. I mentioned this when I came on before, by anti-Black racism. A lot of the backlash said Black Lives Matter. And I think that, people just need to get out there. And I think that's easier now because it's a little easier. I see some of these bullies have less power because people are not online as online as they used to be during the pandemic. But I think we're still kind of in this state of fear that a lot of us are, that we were during the pandemic, and just scared to speak up. So if I can do one thing just through being, speaking right now, is just to encourage people to speak out, because one thing that was done during this nationwide attack on school boards is try to silence voices of reason, which is the majority, quite frankly. But the other side has just been so loud and so intimidating. I mean, you saw like all of our school board members that were recalled. They had people come to their houses and homes and threaten them, like total strangers. So,
the recalls themselves had a chilling effect on anyone who even wants to get involved with But also, I mean, you did point out how anti-blackness was kind of like a centralized part of the campaign itself. But the Black population in San Francisco hovers between 4% and 5%. Why and how did anti-blackness become such a central aspect of the recall? I mean, because I also noticed we talk about this at the network state as well. We talk about this with Mark Anderson, David Sachs. I mean, like anti-blackness has a tendency of being like a pivot for almost all of these things. Why do you think that is, particularly in something as like I guess comparatively small to other things like taking over like the United States government? Why do you think that is?
I think just the long history of anti-Black racism in this country. And I think also in San Francisco, people are very, they're susceptible to thinking like, oh, we don't have a problem with that here. So I think it's very, people were, I don't want to say they were duped, but a lot of people turned a blind eye to that. It's like, oh, we don't have a problem here. And we wanted to rename schools, but it just wasn't the right time. Or why did they do this during the pandemic? And that was actually, they only had 2 school board meetings where they talked about school renaming. And there's a part of me that's like, yeah, we shouldn't have schools with these ridiculous racist names. So yeah, I think it's just because it's a big problem in San Francisco. We have very segregated schools. I mean, we don't, some of the most segregated, I think we have one of the most segregated school systems in, we're just as bad as New York.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're protected too. You know, look what happens when you try to change the admission program for Lowell, you know. It's like, look at the pushback that comes from that, you know. Yeah.
And I think just that one of the strongest voice we had against school privatization on our school board was Allison Collins. She had blogged about charter schools. She was very prolific. And I think that is one reason why they really went after her, is because she would not have stood for any of this. Neither would Gabriela nor Falga. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that answers my question, because it might have been just because Allie's Black. I mean, it could have been.
Yeah, that's too.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah. No, I mean, it was just like, yeah, Gabriela was, but yeah, she was targeted. Yeah, and we saw this pattern just go through. I know there was a woman in San Diego, a Black school board member, who talked about why she brought up parents wanting kids going back to school during the pandemic before the teachers could get vaccinations, and just really, and it was predominantly white parents, and just really kind of seeing the teachers in as less than human. And this Black school board member talked about how this is a system of white supremacy, and just she had an angry mob show up at her home. So again and again, this is the anti-Black racism that drove so much. And I think anti-Black racism is also what drives a lot of defunding of our public schools as well.
Yeah. I remember people like Meredith Dodson complaining about how, the teachers weren't back, who is a pro-parent school advocate, I guess, AstroTurf. But I mean, literally, it was like, and then bragging about being in Italy and stuff. And it's just like, so clearly, like, wait a minute, though, like, what are you doing? You don't have a job. Like, you should just, like, we made it work. Why do people need their free babysitters? Like, why can't they see teachers as humans?
Yeah. And even just like they framed it as like this is very teachers versus parents. Like I didn't want my kid going to school, because I care about my teacher's safety, but also because I care about my own safety. And my kid can't learn if he's in a coffin or if I'm in a coffin, So it's no, I mean, thank God in San Francisco, we didn't see I think we all just try to, we don't think about just how deadly the pandemic, or lots of people don't think about how deadly the pandemic was if they don't have lives there were family members who were touched by it. They didn't have family members who had to go to work in a restaurant, who couldn't social distance, and were making food that for delivery, so people could work from home and not have to go out to a grocery store. They don't think about the death. So Meredith's organization is also funded by Michael Moritz. So she has a San Francisco Parent Coalition, a 501c3, and then a 501c4 called the San Francisco Parent Political Action Committee. And so that arm is funded by 2 billionaires, Michael Moritz and also Mimi Haas, whose son Daniel Lurie is running for mayor. Yeah. And Meredith's organization is also a part of they're a chapter of the National Parents Union, which is run by Carrie Rodriguez. She's in Boston, and she is actually a member of a really right-wing organization called Democrats for Education Reform. You learn all about this. I have one more book I really love. It's called Dark Money and the Politics of School Privatization by Morris Cunningham. And it talks all about the National Parents Union. So Meredith, it's not really politically popular to say you're pro-charter school or pro-privatization in San Francisco. So like everything in San Francisco, we do it through code. And she'll get really upset if you say that she's pro-privatization, but it's like, look, you're a part of a pro-privatization organization. And yeah, I think that's, yeah. So.
But yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So now as you're ramping up this fight and they're pushing forward they're trying to bulldoze through and get these schools closed. Do you feel any hope that you can stop these school closures?
I do. I think that parents want, so there's a list that's going to be released. I think I can't remember the date. I think it's September 12th or 16th. Sorry, the date is escaping me, but it's going to be released within the next week of this list of names. So the parents or the school community has been given less than a year to really learn about this school closure process. And so a lot of people are just finding out about this now. And so the district hasn't done its due diligence in really having community input. And it's very hard to, like, parents are busy. They're like, a lot of our parents are working 2 jobs. Just like they don't have time to get interested in, not interested, because I think all parents and all families are interested, but they don't have the time to commit to a lot of these things. So I think they're going to be absolutely shocked and furious. And I will say, even if you are, they talk about how important it is to have quote unquote fully enrolled schools. And this whole idea that our schools are under enrolled is just a business construct, because we have private schools. They brag about like, oh, we have a really low teacher to student ratio, only 15 to 18 kids per class. Why is that a bad thing when it comes to our public schools? Why is that quote unquote under enrolled? So I think they're going to be absolutely furious. I think also, has anybody talked to the students? They didn't put any student on the this quote unquote resource alignment / school closure committee. I know we've had some kids say, if they close my school, I'm not going back. So if they do close schools, we're going to for sure see a huge spike in absenteeism. I think it'll be really hard on teachers. So I think it's just kind of this creating this doom loop that is really bad for our public schools.
Well, do you know what schools are on the chopping block as far as like the districts where these schools will be closed?
No, they've been really secretive about that. My hunch is that it will be small schools. They've made that pretty clear. I also worry about our K-8 schools as well. I also worry about schools. My main concern is schools in the southeast part of the city closing, because 10 to 15 years ago, when they did that, that's where they were targeted. And families were sent these horrible surveys on what we thought the district should use to decide which schools to close. And they would ask parents like, should cost per student be a factor? And when we had a community meeting where the superintendent came out to my kid's school, and I stood up and I said, I'm a former adult ESL teacher. I have a child with a disability. When you talk about cost per student, that is ableist and racist. It's very English, centric. It discriminates against why are we even asked? Because, and a lot of parents just are going a million, like, they don't think about those kinds of things. A lot of parents do. But, just the fact that kind of racist framing is even being pushed or allowed or promoted by the district is just absolutely infuriating. Or just how desirable a school is. My kid went to elementary school at a school just a block away from my home. It's a predominantly Asian school. On my block, there almost every parent does not send their kid to that school. And I've talked to other parents, and they'd say like, oh, there are a lot of kids whose who their English is not their first language. My kid's going to have a hard time, keeping up. They won't be able to advance. All of these just horrible things are like, oh, I don't. So Yeah, I see how parents make these really racist decisions about where to send their kids to school, or if they do send their kids to schools where they're just trying to take over the PTA and gentrify them. That's not the solution either. So when you hear about school choice, yeah, that's something then, and quote unquote desirable. I will say one thing I see like in the West Side is that we have a lot of high push out when it comes to school, kids needing the help they need, not getting the help they need, and instead getting pushed out. I mean, just like having a kid's name written on the board because they didn't get their homework done. That's a kind of push out. I talked to like friends who have their kids in different parts of schools in different part of the city. It's not as much of an issue. So
yeah. So, and I think that was even a part of the presentation, right? Or at least the San Francisco Education Alliance breakdown that I saw, that it seems like the West Side schools are kind of being favored, maybe a little protected from possible closure, while East Side but other areas will probably focus more on closing, and so they're all going to have to travel to the West Side just to go to school.
Yeah, when you say things like smaller schools, or like is the school being used, or in what condition is this school? There are families at Buena Vista Horace Mann, which is an amazing bilingual Spanish-speaking immersion school in the Mission District. Just phenomenal teachers, just so much. It's a community school, so much pride in that school. They have, I think, just been complaining about the conditions of their schools for years. I mean, just with electrical systems not working, like kids seeing like plaster in the bathroom ceilings falling when they went in there. So our schools in the Southeast Side have been really neglected for a long time, and in a way that our West Side schools haven't. So if even thinking or talking about using that as a metric, I mean, there's just been a lot of really racist disinvestment in our schools, and then saying like, oh, well, let's just like, that's one more way to really sort of kick people down, is let's look at this as a way to as a reason why we should make these, have these communities suffer more than they should.
Right. Yeah. Essentially, it's just discouraging people from even living in the areas where the schools were being closed. I mean, people will move away if there's not a school close to them, that they'll actually either leave San Francisco altogether, or because they can't live near a school, right?
Yep. And watch those property values go up,
Right. And exactly. And this is there's a reason. Gentrification is also like a part of this. I mentioned privatization, but also in cities like Chicago, every school we've seen where there's been this kind of thing, we've seen this sort of gentrification. And that's kind of the goal for a lot of people. They want to see, I want to see property, values go up. You can't do that on the backs of kids. That is like, is this the kind of person you really want to be? And I want to say school closures, in a way, there's also the issue of, and this is what, I mean, there are many reasons we, like raising kids, like the proverb, it takes a village, right? We should all care about this. This is just something we should do as humans, or a way we should look at this. But also another way of looking at this is just, if the school is closed, like what's going to happen to that building? My worry is there's going to be blight. It doesn't matter where you are. It's not great to have a huge empty building there for a long time. So like, even if people are coming from it from the perspective, like, yeah, I care about my property values, that's another reason why you should support, should be opposed to these closures, because a lot of times that's what's happened. And have we seen the city of San Francisco be able to take an empty building and turn it into something good? No. And it's like, we shouldn't be using our schools as a way, school buildings as a way to like solve our housing problem. There's a lot of other ways we can do that. And also, I think just the Mayor Breed's reluctance to spend money on building public housing. There's a lot of money from Prop I and Prop C that's supposed to be used to build public housing that she's just sitting on and not using. So, I mean, because at the end of the day, they don't want to have affordable housing. They want to have wealthy people living here so they can win elections.
Totally. Oh man, it's so evil and cynical. And the thing is too, do you think a strategy is being developed here for these school closures? Like, do you think this could be a blueprint, or is it already being used as a blueprint around the nation for school closures and, getting that freeing up that property for development? And also, I should add real quick that even if that property is available, it doesn't mean anyone's going to develop it, because they're still waiting for the rents to go back up. They've literally said, oh, if you want more housing, have rents increase. And it's like, well, that's what's causing all the issues in the first place. I thought this build thing was supposed to bring down rents. But, again, though, do you think, is this a blueprint for this kind of real estate takeover of school property?
I could, and again, and I could definitely see it as that. I think that there was real estate money that the California Apartment Association, I think, took a pro recall stance. And so it's like, why did you would think at, just looking at it like, well, why would they care? Well, of course they care. Real estate and public schools are very, very much linked. This is so sinister. There's this, you probably know of the website Zillow.com. Yeah. So if you are located in near a school that has high standardized test scores, your property value will go up. So there, I think, is just a move to, and don't get me talking about how standardized test scores are problematic in so many ways. But yes. So there is, I do think that one of the reasons why people wanted Lowell to be segregated and to have an elitist and illegal admissions policy is because they probably have very standardized test scores, because they've have this policy where they can screen out and counsel kids with moderate to severe disabilities. So yeah, I think it's a part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, so and it's kind of true.
This kind of thing that's going on there too. Like they're throwing eugenics in there. That's
exactly. That is And in the resolution that was written, I'm glad you brought that up. To desegregate Lowell, it talked about how I can't remember the name of the person who developed Q-Test was an eugenicist. And so yes, it is a deliberate attempt to keep Black and brown students out of Lowell High School.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, I know the guy in Yap is actually a eugenicist. So I mean, like it's just crazy to me. That's insane. Because it's also kids with disabilities. I mean, like, so where are these kids go? Like, and there are kids with actually also got learning disabilities that also need to be in a very socialized scenario. Schools are not businesses. They're places. They're public goods. That's crazy.
Exactly. I think I'm so glad you brought that up, Scott. I think a lot has been lost about like, what is the purpose of public schools? There's just like, oh, we got to prepare kids for the workforce. Well, the workforce is always evolving. But, even aside from that, the purpose of public schools is to help children become good citizens. It's really to teach citizenship and how to be a critical thinker. Yeah. And I think a lot of folks, have lost sight of that.
Yeah, because both my parents were educators, and then my mom actually said to me that the reason why she actually put me in public school was so I could go and hang out with other kids. She's like, we could keep you home and we could teach you here, but actually we'd have you be socialized. We want you to learn how to have social skills, how to get along with other people, how to like that. It's not just about learning and I have no problem with standardized tests, but it really was about socialization for my parents,
Yeah. I will say, as much as I, complain about in our public schools, my son, who's in middle school, is having a great experience. Like, he loves going to school, and there have been times when he struggled. And I know it's hard for a lot of kids, but the stuff he's learning is really amazing. And just like learning, it's from so many. Our educators too in San Francisco are pretty amazing. He's had some pretty amazing teachers. So I know experiences vary, but yeah, I so agree with that. I share that philosophy as well.
Yeah. And I mean, you don't go into the business of education for money. I mean, maybe if you're like curriculum development or something, you know, maybe.
What's the charter, like a charter school executive? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But if you're going in as a teacher, as a counselor, I mean, you're doing good. You're doing a community service, and
That's right.
it's what's so sad about our system is so much of it is taking advantage of those good intentions.
Well,
And
bad faith is overriding good intentions in too many sectors of the world right now.
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think this has been a great conversation. I think this would be a good place to end it. Thank you so much, Brandee. Please tell the people how they can help you in your mission to keep San Francisco schools open, and also where they can just follow what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. Yes. San Francisco Education Alliance. Go to our website, click on join. We've got pretty much a weekly or bi-weekly, every other newsletter. We ask folks to come out to school meetings. That is the best way to stay in touch with us, is through our newsletter. It's short. It's not too much to read. Also, we're on Twitter as well. But yeah, also stay involved with get involved with Evolve California, because as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, the crux of our problem is really the statewide funding crisis. So yeah, they're a fantastic organization to get involved with.
Wonderful. Well, we'll have those links in the comments of the episode. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Please follow us on YouTube, on all the socials, aka TikTok, Instagram, X, and please, if you can, support us on Patreon. So from me and Scott, have a good one, and keep fighting the good fight.
Thank you.